and I see we can already see your screen, so you're good to go.
Okay, okay, good, good. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. This is the May 2016 project of the month. I like to give my projects a name, and so this is called Elegant Evenings 2, and I'll give you a little history about that. Now, I want to caution everybody ahead of time. I just got issued a tornado watch. I'm here in Windsor, Colorado, so we'll see what happens. I have no intention of taking root in the basement, but just in case you don't hear me, then that might happen. With no further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this. So as I said, this is titled Elegant Evenings 2, and there's a little bit of a story behind this project. It started off with, I used to work on a project for Floriani, and they were called software socials. And I made a project, a software social, and I called it Elegant Evenings. I used one of the Floriani signature design sets, and it's titled Elegant Feathers. And this is a picture of the project, and this was done on silk du peony. And I loved this project. And then I came across down here in the lower left-hand corner, this purse. And this is a purse, and it's made by a designer, and the designer's name is Anushka. And I purchased this purse because when I saw it, and I saw those feathers on this purse, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got those Floriani Designs, the Elegant Feathers, and I could do something with a feather design. So I bought the purse so that I could use it as an inspiration piece. So I wanted to share with you a little bit of that. And if you get an opportunity, or if you've ever seen an Anushka bag, they are all hand painted. Every purse is hand painted by an artisan, and the purses are signed. And when you look at this purse with these feathers on there, it's a beautiful Caribbean blue leather, and then it has all of these wonderful feathers. And I want you to take notice of the way the feathers are placed on this project, because you'll see that there's a couple of large feathers here and then smaller feathers, and it almost gives it, to me, it looks like the feathers are floating on air. So this was my inspiration piece, and then the large picture that you see here on the right is the project as it was completed. And unfortunately, I do have to say that the picture does not do this project justice. I think every once in a while, as somebody who likes to create things, I like to sew, I like to embroider, every once in a while I create something that is absolutely stunning, and I have to tell you that this is one of those projects. And I had this in the booth last month. I was working a show in Fresno with Marty Sandel, and we hung this up in the booth because this is made with one of our newest products, the Floriani Fab Foam. So I hung it up in the booth, and every person that walked by the booth and saw this purse went over and commented on it. I mean, it really is that stunning. It's one of the best projects I've ever done. So I'm really excited to share with you this project. I will pause for just a minute and point out a couple of things. So you'll notice that the feathers are interspersed throughout the one side of this bag. I mentioned to you that Anushka purses are hand signed by the designer. So when you see my name down here on the bottom, I thought, well, you know what? I've got this purse done. I'm going to go ahead and sign it on there. So I did sign my name on the bottom. So this is a Catherine, an original purse. When you look at this, I used Floriani metallic threads with this. These are Swarovski crystals, and Floriani will be carrying Swarovski crystals if your dealer doesn't have them yet. These particular crystals, and I wish you could see them because they're absolutely stunning on this purse. These are iridescent crystals, and so when you look at them in the light, they actually have a tendency to change color. And so they really play off the teal blue of the fabric. They play off of the purple of the feathers. They really make this particular project pop. I also used paints on this, and I'll talk a little bit more about how I put this together when we get into the project section of this. Your materials at a glance for this project, you will need to have the handout, and I'm going to, when I go over into my computer, I will refresh your memory on where to get your copy of this. Remember that every month now we will be giving you a free design for the project of the month, and you will be getting the handout for this. We will create the design, and then we'll just talk about the project construction as we go through here. The materials that you're going to need. Well, first of all, make sure that when you launch your software and you log into the myfloriani.club, that you go into this tab right here, which is your monthly designs and your project. When you select that tab, this is going to come up, and this is the May. So if you've already installed your designs for May, your free designs, then you already have your handout and everything that you need to work on this project. If you haven't done that yet, the first thing you'll need to do is install these designs. If you do not have the software, I do have to confess to you that the projects of the month, these are tailored towards people that have the FTC-U software. We work in the software and we do some kind of a skill in the software. And designs are downloaded through that myfloriani.club, and you do have to have the software in order to be a member of that. So I apologize. Once you've got that, you're going to download your handout, and in the handout it's got a list down there that talks about the materials. So real quickly, one of the products that I used in this is a brand new product from Floriani, and it's called Fab Foam. If you can get your hands on this, this product is absolutely phenomenal. It's a foam product, but it actually has a fusible on it. If you don't have that, you could use Floriani Deco Magic or the Floriani Deco Magic Light. You will get a different result, but those are useful as substitutions. Of course, you want to have your Floriani Dreamweave Ultra. Any project that I'm working on, when I get ready to embroider it, I do put Dreamweave Ultra on there because it really changes the way the designs stitch out on your fabric. Your threads. This is a project that was made for all of those wonderful, different, beautiful threads that you have. So I use metallic threads in my project. I use variegated threads in it, and of course I use regular embroidery. The stabilizer that I use is Floriani Perfect Stick Tearaway Embroidery Stabilizer. And this is a stabilizer that I feel is a must-have in your embroidery room. So every time you go to a Floriani event, make sure that you grab a roll of your Floriani Perfect Stick. I also in this project use Floriani Fusible Heat and Stay. And I didn't use it really as a stabilizer per se, but I used it as I was constructing the inside of my bag to give stability to the card popper inside of it. The Floriani Chrome needle, I used the 7511 embroidery needle and the 8012 universal, and that universal was for constructing the project. I used Quilters Select Appli-Stick tape. I love this. I've really kind of made a transition to using this as opposed to the Floriani Applique Wonder tape, and there's a very logical reason for that. The Appli-Stick tape is very light. It doesn't add bulk, so you get a wonderful fusion with it. It's a heat fusible tape, but it's very light. I also used the Quilter Select glue stick. I love our glue stick. Anytime you need to stick a little piece of fabric down or you need to stick something on, just use a little bit of the glue stick as opposed to a pin. You'll get much better results. And then, of course, was my Swarovski crystals. So they're kind of embellishment that you would like to have. The other thing, this is just some optional materials, but for this particular project, I actually used a commercial pattern. The pattern is created by Pam Demore, and when you download your handout and you open it up, what's going to happen is that you will have a hyperlink. And so you can just click on this hyperlink and it'll take you directly to her website where you can order this. So it's her Quick Clutch Wallet pattern. And then with that pattern, you will need her hardware. And this is a 7.5-inch wallet clasp frame from her website. Some dealers do carry these in their store, so it's worth looking for that. And this pattern and this clutch is so easy to put together. You can make one of these purses in about an hour if you don't embroider it. You need to have a zipper for the inside. You need to have a lining fabric. And this is just a little tip. Whenever I'm making a purse or a bag of some sort, I always make my lining from a light fabric. That gives contrast, and so you can find things. You'll need your fabric for the outside of the bag. I custom dyed my fabric, and when we get into constructing the project, I'll talk about some different things that I did with that. And these are optional too. If you want to dye your fabric, you'll need a fabric dye. I use a set of color transparent paints. Also Lumiere paints. These are a fabric paint. I do recommend paints. You can use any paint on fabric, including paint that you'd put in the house. But these Lumiere paints are actually designed to work on fabric, and so they're going to adhere to the fabric. They're not going to run, and you'll get better results. My fabric for painting, you can paint on any fabric. So find a white cotton fabric or a silk fabric. Pre-wash the fabric to remove any kinds of chemicals or sizing from that fabric. Or you can actually purchase fabric. It's called PFD, and that stands for Prepared for Dyeing. And PFD fabric, it's not really prepared other than it doesn't have any kind of sizing or anything in it. So you don't have to pre-wash it. And you can find different kinds of PFD fabrics. So regular fabric, you don't need to have that. So there's some notes on that. And this is a fun project to do. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do, let me minimize that, is we're going to toggle over and we're going to go ahead and do our software lesson. So I'm going to tab over and open up my software here, my FTC-U. I already have it open. And the first thing that I'm going to do is launch a new document. Now, real quickly, I just want to, if you did not participate in the webinar last month, or if you're new to these projects of the month, I want to show you where to get the handout with the instructions. So I'm on Windows 8. If you're on Windows 10, folder down here on the quick launch bar. I'm going to left click on my File Explorer just to kind of walk you through where you find your OS, your C drive. Okay, I'm going to, underneath your C drive, you're going to find your folder titled Floriani. I'm going to expand that, and under the Floriani folder, find your design. When you open that up, you will find underneath there free FTC-U project. There's April, March, and May. We're working on the May project, so I'm going to go right ahead and I'm going to highlight that. When you open that, you're going to see these are the designs, and then this is that PDF file that you're looking for. So what you want to do is you want to double click and open that up. It's an Adobe Reader. You can open it in Adobe Reader, or actually I think even in Word now, and print that off, and that's going to give you your instructions and everything that you need to put your project together. So I wanted to review that. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So I've got my blank document open. We're going to use our library tab today. In your library tab, you now have a category called Free FTC-U Project. So if you see my cursor, you can see where I am designating. There's a plus sign. I'm going to go ahead and click on that plus sign. That's a left click, and that's going to open it up. So I have my April, my March, and my May project. We're working on the May project, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. You want to make sure that you highlight that. Click that May 2016 folder. Once you have that clicked, you're now going to take your cursor, you're going to navigate over to your Designs tab, and you're going to activate your Designs tab. you will see 3 designs. So the first design is the back. This is the design that we're going to use and work with, and then the front. I went ahead and included both of those designs so that if you didn't, if you have any kind of problems with this particular project, you can just open those up and stitch them out. We're going to work with this feather. Now, this feather, as I mentioned earlier, comes from a wonderful collection of designs, and those designs are located, and I'm going to real quickly go to my library tab and just show you those designs, because you may want to, you get one free design, but I would really encourage you that when you go into your Floriani event that you look at these designs. They're called Elegant Feathers, and they come in 3 different sizes. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that 7 by 7. And within that, what you'll find is these are the designs that are included in there. And they're created so that you could create a quilt or something from those. So there are a lot of designs that are incorporated into that. I've given you one free design, and you only need this one design to actually make your project. What we're going to do is we're going to use our sequence view window over here, and we're going to take this part, this Floriani Dreamsicle right here, which is the upper portion of the design, and I'm just going to grab it so you can see. So you'll see this is 3 separate colors. Let me undo. We're going to, in our sequence view window, do a quick right click, and we're going to copy that. Okay. Launch a new document and come over and paste that in there. And I'm going to zoom to fit. Okay, so I've got this little stem right here, and that's going to be the basis for what I'm going to work with. What we're going to do now in the software is we're going to digitize. Now, I don't do a lot of digitizing. I'm not really a digitizer. I know how to use the tools. These are your digitizing tools up on your upper toolbar here. So this is a manual stitch, running stitch. We're going to use this tool right here, the satin stitch. I'm going to click on that. Now, I want to demonstrate to you how this tool works. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to launch a new document so that I have a clean slate to work with. Now, the way that this tool works is I'm going to left click, and that puts down a vector, a point. Okay. Now, I'm going to continue to left click, and every time I left click, it puts down another point. Okay. And these are angular shapes. So all you need to do to digitize is click around. When you are digitizing, if you want to back up, use your backspace key. So right now, I'm tapping my backspace key, and it's just walking me back to the beginning. I want to create a curved shape. So if I go back to my original feather, do you see this beautiful curved shape right here? How do I do that? Let me go back to my blank shape. And to create a curved shape, we're going to hold down the Control key on our keyboard. So right now, I'm holding my Control key, and I'm going to click, and I'm still doing a left click in that same pattern. But do you see how now I've got this beautiful curved shape right here? If I want to create a pointed feather, I release my Control key, and I'm going to click once, twice. Then I'm going to grab my Control key and come back around on this shape. Okay, that's how easy it is. Once you have your shape, I'm going to right click. Now, it doesn't look like anything happens, but if you'll notice, I'm moving my cursor there. I'll put it in the middle, and do you see that there's a black diamond on the bottom of my cursor? We call that a bead. That bead, what I do with this now, and this is what I love about our Floriani digitizing tool, I get to set my direction for my thread. So this is just setting direction. I'm going to click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. That's all I'm doing. I'm setting the stitch direction. So this is going to be stitching here, and you'll see that in just a minute when I finish this. I'm going to right-click again. Nothing happens. But once again, my cursor's changed, and I have a green bead. So now I get to designate the starting point for this. Where is this going to start? I want to start here and finish here. So I'm going to left-click. I've just placed my starting point. See how now I have a green circle. My cursor has changed once again, and I have a red bead on there. Not only do I get to designate my starting point, I get to designate my ending point. So I want this to stitch out like this. I want it to start here. I want it to end here. So I'm going to go ahead and left-click. And once I do that, there you go. I've got that. And so when I talk about, I'm going to just zoom in a little bit. When I designated, do you see how the stitch patterns change here? Okay. So that's how easy it is to use these digitizing tools. It's very, very easy. But you have to kind of understand those processes in there. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a preset. Now, what is a preset? Well, when I'm using this tool, there are preset parameters for the tool. And so I'm moving over to my properties box right now. And what you'll notice is, do you see here under the density? The density is a half a millimeter, 0.5. Well, when I look at my design here and I'm looking at that stem, it's nice and open. I'm going to go back in here, right here to this that I stitched, and I'm going to bump up the density of that and click on apply. Oops, I must select it first, bump it up, always select it, and now apply. Okay, so I've just altered that stitch density. So to create a preset, once I have my settings over here, and just so you know, if I wanted to create a custom setting with maybe a custom underlay or custom push-pull, I could also incorporate all of those settings into my preset. You can pretty much do what you would like. But right now, all I want is I want a stitch density of 7. So with that selected, once again, make sure it's selected, I'm going to come back up to my tool, and there's a little black arrow right to the very right of it. I'm going to left click, and it says Save Preset. So I select that, and I'm going to give this preset a name, and very logically, 0.70 stitch density. And I try to be pretty descriptive in what that setting is, and I'm going to say OK. Oh, preset saved successfully. Now, notice that when I come back up under this, see how I've got my stitch density of 7? Let's see how that works. Let's go back to our feather. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're using that 0.7 stitch density. And we're just going to digitize a stem to go right up the center of this feather. So I'm going to start at the bottom, left click, hold down my control key, click, 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 release control key, because I want a nice clean point. Control key, come back down this side. Now notice over here in my properties box, see that density is set at 7. That's what that preset does. I right click. Now I just real quickly add my stitch direction, right click, starting point, finishing point, and it digitizes it. And now I have a perfectly digitized stem, and I don't have to go back and reset any of those settings. If you have a setting, if you want to create a preset for one specific project, you can go ahead and do that, and then you can actually edit these. So you can create a preset, and then you can remove it. And you can create presets for any of your manual digitizing tools. So for instance, under your running stitch, I can create a 3-mil bean stitch. So you have that ability to create all of these nice custom preset settings for those manual digitizing tools for settings that you use frequently. All right, so that's preset. That's how you're going to use that digitizing tool. All right, so now what we're going to do, let's go back. That's all the digitizing we're going to work on. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to our main design here. All right, and I'm going to create a artwork shape. I like to, when I'm working on a project, I like to use artwork shapes to define the parameters of what my project is going to be. So if I'm using the Pam Damore clutch pattern, the dimensions of that purse is, it's going to finish off at 7.5 inches. And I'm going to create a rectangular shape just to kind of show me where I want to put my designs and give me a visual placement for working with the designs in here. So I decided that, and this is included in your handout just so you know, so you don't have to do the math, but I decided that a width of 9 inches and a height of 6 inches, and I'm going to work on 2 separate files. So I'm going to do one piece of fabric, but I'm going to stitch out the top half of the fabric and then the bottom half of the fabric. And the clutch folds in half, so that became the front and the back. So I'll go ahead and apply that, and I'm going to zoom to fit here. And so now I've got this rectangle, and what I want to do is I'm just going to take and randomly put feathers in there to create some kind of a design. And this is personal preference, and so you know, I think every person's would look a little bit different. So I started working with this first individual feather and the entire feather, and I decided that just to kind of give it some movement, I was going to put it on a diagonal. And these designs, these feather designs, resize beautifully and out beautifully. So you can make them larger, you can make them smaller. I made some of my feathers probably 1 inch in size, and they stitched out beautifully. So I'm going to start with one feather, and then I'll go back to, if you look at the project here, you'll see, so I've got one large feather and lots of small feathers in there, just kind of as a reference of what I'm working on here. So I'm going to go back and grab this feather that I just created, and I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste it in here. Okay. And I can change the color on it. And maybe resize it. And maybe I'll put another one in. And so I'm going to right-click and paste. And just so you know, I can right-click and paste over here. I can right-click and paste in my sequence view. They will both work. So make sure that you're really capitalizing on all the various ways that you can work in your software. All right. Oh, let me undo that. Forgot to grab my stem. Now, as I'm creating this design, I want to make sure, I didn't grab that stem, I'll just go ahead and delete it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I want to make sure that I'm filling up the page, and I actually wanted to have feathers that were extending off the outside to give it that flow, just to kind of look like the original bag that I was using as my inspiration piece. These I have digitized the stems to stitch out, but see how I left the stem out of this one? That's because I'm going to go back in after I've stitched out this design, and I'm going to use my Lumiere paints to paint the stem in. The Lumiere paints that I have actually are kind of pearlescent, and so I'm going to paint that after the fact. So this is a great project. I really want you to challenge your creativity. So we're going to go ahead and continue to fill our page with different kinds of feather shapes in here. and changing colors in there and moving them all around the page. So that eventually, and I'm going to go back into my library and go back to the free designs, and I'm going to grab my friend in my bag here. So eventually, what you're going to end up with is something like this. So I've got my one large feather that's going to stitch out in the center, and then I overlapped various feathers over the top here. And so this is the look that I was going for. I really wanted to have that layering effect. The one thing that I will share with you, and this is just an aesthetic piece in there. When I finished, I counted up how many feathers I had in my design. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so you might want to have, and I think there's another one in here somewhere. I really tried to have an odd number of feathers in my design. So just scatter them around the page till you get an effect that you like. And then you're going to save this. So I'm going to do a save as first and make sure that I save this as my WAF file. I've mentioned this before, but when you're working on a project, and I learned the hard way, always save as a WAF file, because if you need to come back to the original file and make any kind of changes to it, open up that original WAF, make your changes to that. And so actually what I do, I always save my design and take it to my machine on a USB stick. But what I'll do is I'll create a folder on my USB stick for my project. And in that folder, I will save my WAF design first, and then I will save my design for my machine. So save it as your WAF, and then save it for your machine. And so to save for your machine, that's a process of file. You're going to save as, you're going to choose the format that you need for your machine. Mine would be an EXP file, and I would export it as that and take that to my machine. So that's pretty much what we're doing in the software. So as a recap, what we did today was we just started with one simple design. And I want to kind of emphasize from this particular project in this lesson is that a lot of times we have designs in our library, and you look at them and you're not exactly sure what to do with them. And I love this particular project because I took one simple design and created something complex from it. And so when you start going back and examining the designs that you have, don't look at the whole design, small components of it, because there's a lot of different things you can do with that. And in your Floriani Total Control U software, you have the power to do things like this in your software. So we started with our one individual design. We took a small portion of that. We used our satin stitch tool. I call this the bean tool. We used our bean tool. We practiced creating that stem. We changed the density, and then we saved that as a preset. And then just to kind of reiterate, when you are done, if you want to remove your preset, all you need to do is come down to remove presets, and then you can delete it from there. So that's not anything that you're keeping within that. All right, I'm going to go back now and toggle back over into the PowerPoint, because that's a fairly simple software lesson, but that's all we're going to do in that today. And now we're going to talk about the project construction. And as we go through this, I used a pattern. And so I'm not going to talk about the actual construction of the project, because if you use the Pam DeMoore pattern, you want to follow her directions for that. They're very clear, very concise, and you will be very happy with that particular pattern. But I do have a couple of tips and tricks that I want to share with you. And then I wanted to talk about preparing the fabric and talk about that dyeing process. So I did dye my own fabric, and it's very easy to do. It's not very complicated. It's fun. It's almost like the big thing right now is adult coloring and adult coloring books. It's very therapeutic. And I found the process of dyeing my fabric to be very therapeutic. And the wonderful thing was when I got done, I had a piece of fabric that nobody else had anything like, and I made that fabric exactly what I wanted. So when you're creating your fabric, start with a piece of fabric and make it very, very large. And I actually started with, I took a half a yard of fabric and cut it in half. I had a fat quarter of fabric, and I dyed the fat quarter. This was a very generous fabric left over that I can use for other things. If you're using regular fabric that you purchase, just go to your stash and find a white piece of fabric or a light colored piece of fabric, wash the fabric, and then dry it ahead of time. Okay, so fabric takes dye differently, and this is, I think, a perfect example. When you look at the picture here, I've got two pieces of fabric that I dyed, and I used pretty much the same process for both of them. The fabric on the left is a cotton fabric, and the fabric on the right is it's a fabric that I came across, and it's a polyester dupioni. It looks like silk dupioni, it feels like silk dupioni, only it's made out of polyester. It was $8 a yard. Silk dupioni is $20 a yard. But one of the things that you'll notice, this was the dye process, and this was a great project for me because I learned a lot. But that polyester fabric, if you can see that, took the dye totally different than the cotton fabric did, and I think it's just the nature of the weave. Cotton is a natural fiber, and it really absorbed that. It looks like on the left here with the polyester that the dye just kind of sat on top of the fabric. It's not bad, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. If you don't purchase dyes, I came across this method of dyeing fabric. I call it the Sharpie method. And yes, you use Sharpie markers, the regular markers that you would use to, write on a moving box. And you use those to dye your fabric. And this is the quick method. And you can find videos. When you print off your handout, I actually have a link in there to a YouTube. And so what you're going to do is you take your fabric, make sure that your fabric is dry. You're going to take a Sharpie marker and you're going to mark up the fabric. Okay, so this was a light blue, a dark blue, and an off green in there. I just marked the fabric with a Sharpie marker. Then you're going to use rubbing alcohol. Go to the dollar store, the Dollarama store, and buy plain rubbing alcohol. And what you do is you saturate the fabric with the rubbing alcohol. And what it does is it dissipates the Sharpie marker into the fabric. And so you can see that it kind of bleeds through there. And I put this into I just wrapped it in saran wrap so that I could manipulate it. But I took my fabric, I put it into a Ziploc bag, put the alcohol in there, and then just massaged it. And so I let it sit for about an hour and just massaged it and kind of worked that ink around and took it out, let it dry in the sun, and that's how I dyed the fabric. So this is the Sharpie method of dyeing it. The second method is actually using fabric dye, and I put a couple of links in there for some of the fabric dyes that I use. This one, it's by, I think it's called Pabeo, P-A-B-E-O. As I said, there's a link to it. I actually found some of this in the big box store the other day back in one of the corners. I ordered mine online. These are Sukaniko paints, so you can find those readily at a lot of the sewing galas that you go to. But here's my fabric. I covered my kitchen table with a trash bag. This method, I'm going to use water. So I'm going to saturate my fabric first. The Sharpie method was dry fabric. This method, I'm going to wet the fabric first. So I've got a couple of paint brushes, and I've got a foam brush and a glass of water and my paint. So what I did is I dropped my brush into the paint. My fabric is wet. I daubed the paint on there, grabbed my foam brush, and started moving the paint through the fabric. This fabric that I'm using is by Moda, and it's a grunge fabric. And if you've ever seen Moda grunge fabric, it actually has a pattern to it. So I did a close-up so that you could see that, because the pattern gave the fabric, I think, a beautiful, interesting effect. So this is the fabric after it was done. So this is that grunge effect that I showed you the close-up of. So it makes the fabric take the dye differently. And so this was just a process. I'd put a little ink on there, move it around, put a little dye on there, move it around. Once I got the fabric where I wanted it, I laid it out in the sun to dry. You could also put it into your dryer. I didn't want to put it into my dryer wet. I was afraid of the dye transferring to my dryer, so I dyed it in the sun. And then you're going to heat set the dye, and that's done with an iron. Or you can put it into your dryer, turn your dryer on high, dry it for 10 minutes. And once this is heat set in there, then you can wash and dry the fabric. So it's really a lot of fun. This is the finished fabric. So this is the cotton fabric. On the upper portion right here, this is the fabric with the dye method. So, and this is the fabric with the Sharpie method. This is the polyester Dupioni fabric, and I thought it was really interesting because the polyester Dupioni fabric using the Sharpie method, I got a much better result. And I know that you can't see this as well on the PowerPoint, but if you saw the fabric and you could actually touch it, you'd see that the fabric has a beautiful sheen to it. I'm going to use it for another project. So the polyester was wonderful with the Sharpie method, but I thought it was really interesting how the polyester actually took the dye. I don't think the polyester took the dye as well as the cotton did. So a little bit of experimentation there will give you a lot of different results. Once you've got your fabric looking the way that you want it, you're going to go ahead and fuse Dreamweave to the back of the fabric and embroider your design. You don't have to dye your fabric, but I think it's kind of fun. So in my hoop, I used Perfect Stick Tearaway. I did not hoop the fabric, so I fused Dreamweave to the back of the fabric, and then I went ahead and just placed my fabric on top of the hoop and stitched out these feather designs. Once again, this is a project that is wonderful for using a variety of threads on. So when you look at my picture here, this design right here, I believe that was, that's metallic thread. I think this is a metallic thread. I do believe this is a metallic thread. This right here, where my cursor is pointing, that's a variegated thread. I think this one right here, I used a lot of variegated threads in there also because a variegated thread gives you a totally different effect. So I played with threads, and then once I got done stitching out the design, then I came back in with my Lumiere paint and I painted in the stems on the flowers that did not have the stitched stem in there. So, and I actually added some paint around the outside of some of those flowers too. So this is just one of those tap into your creativity. Now, construction tips. Okay, so I've created my fabric. And these are just some construction tips based on the pattern that I was using, which is the Pam Demore pattern. Okay, number one, make a pattern. So I went ahead and created my fabric, but I determined the dimensions of my purse and I made a pattern, or you can make it out of tissue. I like the vellum because it's somewhat see-through. So what that allowed me to do is that I took my vellum over to my fabric and I could place it to get the optimum effect of the feather designs that I have put in there. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but this particular project, a lot of the projects that I do are geared towards large embroidery hoops. If you don't have a large embroidery hoop, this is a great project for a large embroidery hoop. For a small embroidery hoop. So it's wonderful for that too. I apologize. I got sidetracked. I had another call coming in, so I apologize for that. Okay, so Floriani Fab Foam. Love this product. It is a foam. It does have a fusible on it. The foam adds body to the clutch. You're going to fuse it to the outside of your fabric, not to the inside. But the thing about the Floriani Fab Foam is because it has that fusible on it, it eliminates the need to quilt. And if any of you have created any projects using foam, incorporating foam, there are other foam products on the market. One of the things that you have to do is you put your fabric on the foam and then you have to quilt your fabric to the foam. There's nothing to hold your fabric to the foam. You've got to get the fabric to stick to the foam somehow. So you either quilt it or you're going to use some kind of another adhesive. So Floriani Fab Foam has an adhesive built into one side. And it comes in a beige color, so it's going to blend beautifully with any project that you're working on. Now, how do you use it? Number one, read the directions on the package. Okay, so I did read the directions on there, but I just thought I would share with you what I did that worked for me. I did lightly mist the fusible side of the foam. Now, I've taken the foam out and shared it with people, and they look at the foam and they're, well, which side is fusible? You will know which side is fusible. Hold it up to the light, and it's the side that actually has a little bit of a glistening to it. So I lightly misted the fusible side with water, and then I let it sit. And do not saturate the foam. I'm talking about lightly misting it. So I kind of misted it. I moved the water around with my hand. I let it sit. Then I laid my fabric onto the fusible side, on top of that fusible side, and pressed with a dry iron to fuse it. This foam fuses beautifully. You will be amazed. Once I fused it, then I did go ahead and just give it a shot of steam just to kind of puff things up. So that was my method for doing it. I thought I would share that with you. I did not iron the foam side. And if I were going to iron the foam side, I would actually use a pressing cloth, just so you know. The other thing that was great about using the Floriani foam, because it's fusible, I went ahead and cut my foam the exact dimensions of the bag. And I trimmed off the foam where it was at the seam. And that eliminated bulk in the seam. And I think that's another reason why when people look at my bag, they think it looks so amazing, because it doesn't have bulk in the seam. Quilter Select tape. I used that for the zipper. And I religiously, when I'm putting in a zipper now, I use either Applique Wonder tape, or now I use the Appli-Stick tape. As I said, the Appli-Stick tape is it's a very lightweight fusible, so it's not going to add any bulk. But I put the fusible tape down, I peel that off, I lay my zipper down, and then I go ahead and I fuse my zipper in there. And that way I don't have to pin it. And if you don't have to pin your zipper in, you're going to get much more beautiful results. It's going to lay in there beautifully. So you can use the Applique Wonder tape or the Quilter Select Appli-Stick. So I've started using that, and I'm I love it. I love it. The glue stick. I wanted to mention that because that's another item that I like to keep handy in my room. When you're creating this purse, on the inside of the purse, it's got a little zipper in a placket. It's very easy to do. But when you sew that down, you're going to cut this open and you have to twist it around. I went ahead and took my Quilter Select glue stick, and after I had pulled it down, I just took my glue stick and ran a little bead of that glue stick down there and pressed that down. The Quilter Select glue stick, notice that it goes on a yellow color so that you can see where the glue is. When this dries, it dries clear. So the Quilter Select glue sticks, wonderful. Make sure that you pick up one and always grab the refill. Now, I used a zipper foot for stitching the side seams. So remember I mentioned earlier that when I cut my Fab Foam, I cut it to the exact dimensions of my bag. I cut it 7.5 inches wide. My fabric was 8.5 inches wide because I did a 1/2-inch seam allowance. So when I was sewing the bag, I grabbed my zipper foot, and then I used the zipper foot, and the zipper foot, it just ran right along the edge of that fab foam. The fab foam was fused beautifully. Nothing popped up. And hello?
You're good.
Okay, good. I just got a little pop-up. I'm sorry that it said we're experiencing audio difficulties. It's a direct downpour here in Colorado right now. I was in a panic. I apologize, DJ. Okay, we're almost done, people. So, hello, DJ? I think I may have
Yes,
lost
sorry. I'm muted, so that's why it takes a while for me to respond.
Okay.
You're good.
Can you still see my screen?
Yeah.
Adding hardware?
It hasn't switched over to adding hardware yet.
Okay, because I have a little alert up here that says I lost my connection. So I'll just go ahead and finish up on the handout here. So you may not be able to see this. This is just a tip I learned from Pam DeMoore. When you're adding your hardware to your bags, use a hot glue gun, and you run a bead of hot glue down the inside of your purse hardware. And then when you're putting your purse together, if that glue sets up before you get the purse together, and if you've made a purse with hardware, you know what I mean. The nice thing about using hot glue is that you can remelt the hot glue. Just go ahead and use your iron to warm up that hardware, and then it'll melt the glue in there so that you can get the hardware on. Another tip about using hot glue as opposed to some of the other glues that they recommend is that you can reheat the hot glue, then you can remove the hardware and you can reuse it later on. So if you decide you want to create another purse, this one gets old or dirty, you can make another purse and reuse the hardware. Move it off of there. It won't ruin the hardware. And acetone, vitamin A. Okay. Going to be working on a denim cuff using a lace design. I will be posting this picture up on Facebook, on the Floriani Facebook page, so that people can see it. I do want to let you know, please get social. We have a Facebook Floriani Embroidery group, and so you can post pictures up there on the Floriani Embroidery group. For those of you that are on Instagram or Twitter, my username is @KCFarrell, @KCFarrell, and that's my username for Instagram and for Twitter. And so you can, if you put that in there, I'll be able to see that. The hashtag for these, if you're using Instagram or Twitter or any of those, is #ElegantEvening2 or #Floriani Embroidery. With that, I'm going to remind you that if you have any specific questions about the project, you can email me. It's Kathy F, KATHYF, @rnkdistributing.com. And I don't know if you can see my slide, but I did put up here, yes, I do know how to spell Floriani. It was brought to my attention that in my PowerPoint slide last month, down on the bottom, I have a little tagline that says, Floriani is the name that means beautiful embroidery, and I had misspelled Floriani. So for those of you out there that caught that, I last month, I apologize, and it has been fixed this month, so it won't happen again this month. All right, DJ, I think that's it for this month. Are you there?
I am. Thank you very much. And we look forward to next month's project and the next webinar.
Okay.
So thank
Thank you,
you
everyone.
everyone for attending, and we'll see you next time.